Good morning, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing, we wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. This show would be a little bit different from the usual show because it's more of a concept really than a fact-based program or anything like that. And what we're going to focus on in this show is the lack of inventions in the modern world. Now, a lot of you are going to point at news articles where new things are being developed and stuff, and hear me out. So I'm going to distinguish between invention and innovation. For example, the internet was a great invention. HTML and all the different applications and stuff are innovations. They are creations. They take a lot of brain power, but at the same token, they're not game changers like the original. In the past century and a little bit, let's call it 120 years, we've seen a lot of real game-changing inventions. Leaving aside the military stuff, which is all over the place, and we'll probably never know everything that the military messed around with, let's look at the car. The humble automobile was a game changer. Go back and look at the films that were taken in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and you see horse-drawn carriages everywhere. Horses were the main way of getting from point A to point B. Nowadays, we get into our car, we say, hey, we're going to Florida. It's a 2.5-day drive, so we know we need to have this much for gas, and we plan it as casually as we would a trip to the cottage. Maybe not now during the pandemic, but you know what I mean. The airplane, another fantastic invention. The Wright brothers came along, strapped a couple of propellers onto a glider, and managed to get the thing to fly for a couple of seconds. Now, there is some dispute whether they were the first, but whether they were or they weren't, they were the first to pioneer the technology, and they were the first to really invent what a plane is. The jet. Henry Whittle in Britain had a concept, and he was tinkering away with it when the Germans found out about it and came up with their own. And it revolutionized airplanes. It took them from plodding 300-400 miles an hour to supersonic wonder planes that can do anything that you ask them to. But here's the difference. Since then, we've been innovating. The basic car design has not really changed substantially since Henry Ford laid down the Model T. It's got an engine in front, or behind in the case of the Beetle. It's got 4 tires. Again, mostly this hasn't changed. And it goes from point A to point B burning gasoline. Same is true with the plane. It's got one set of wings, or more depending. It's got an engine, something to keep it up in the air. And that's the basic design of a plane. Hasn't changed. And you know what? These are inventions. They're not innovations. You don't keep building bigger and better and faster cars until suddenly you wind up with a plane. You don't make bigger and better propeller engines till suddenly you wind up with a jet. And the rocket has been worked on since the Chinese were playing around with it in the 5th and 6th centuries. So none of those is related to another. They are all important to our current technology, but those are what are called inventions, game changers. When the V2 came along and became applied to civilian uses, it was a game changer because it allowed satellites and, the idea of going to other planets, which is something that the car, the plane, and the jet could not do. The internet, huge game changer. Everybody's life has been affected by it. But we have been plodding along since the mid-90s with no real game-changing technology. And that's startling after coming so far in such a short period of time that we've gone 30 years with nothing. Let me tell you why this is worrisome. I'm looking at this next generation of fusion technology, which is a very advanced nuclear reaction. Actually, it's the easiest nuclear reaction. It's the hardest for us to reproduce, but it's the easiest. It happens the most easily in the universe. But I'm looking at it, and while the source is an invention, every article I can find says something worrying. Let me start with a bit of background here. When you look at your oil-fired plants, your coal-fired plants, even your regular diesel, gasoline, electric generators, They do the same thing. They turn a turbine, and from that whizzing motion, the electromagnetic fields rotate, and that's what generates the electricity. In an oil or a gas-fired plant, they're basically burning, well, they're not burning, they're boiling water. And that water is used to turn a turbine really fast and really successfully. Now, this has been done since the late 1800s, early 1900s, turning turbines. Now, oil and coal-fired natural gas plants, I understand you're working with fire. It's one step removed from the wood that I'm showing you here. And there's only so much you can do with the flame. But let's look at uranium and plutonium. They're kind of friends, they're joined at the hip. Uranium is pretty plentiful, not as plentiful as thorium, but here's what they do. They spend billions of dollars to build a plant that is going to generate a huge amount of nuclear waste. And what are they doing with that? They're boiling water and turning a turbine. That's right. In the uranium reactors that we have today, we're still using 100-year-old technology to actually get the electricity out of them. And this is what bothers me about the fusion reactors, that they're all saying, oh, we're getting close to getting more energy out of them than we're putting into them. That's all fine and good, but if you're still going to use that energy to boil water and run a turbine off of it, this is the weakness in our technology. This is something I would like a scientist to explain to me. The entire point of fusion in the modern age is that it generates the heat of the sun and makes deuterium, which is an isotope of hydrogen, also known as heavy water. It makes that smash together so fast that it becomes a new molecule. This generates basically the same energy that is going on in the sun. So why are we generating steam with that? Why couldn't we adapt a solar panel or something like a solar panel that's maybe sensitive to different light wavelengths? We've had that technology for a long time, and no one proposes putting it in there. They're also talking about boiling water and running it through a turbine. I've said that a lot, and I apologize. I'll try not to say it again. I'll just say turbine. And it's distressing to say, hey, here we are, the 21st century, the internet age, we're on the verge of colonizing the moon and Mars and everything, but we still get electricity the exact same way, with water. And it's just a pet peeve of mine. Why have we advanced so far in one area, and that is generating the actual energy, but we're still using this 100-year-old crap? Now, admittedly, the technology has gotten a lot better over the past 100 years. Just like the car, modern cars would run circles around a Model T if you could get the Model T started in the modern day and age. Remember, those are the old ones where you go in front and you have to crank them, and that's how they start them. We just get in, turn the key, and we go. So there's no question technology is improving. But where are the inventions? And I would argue that we've lost the capacity to invent. Now, why am I arguing that? Because the garage tinkerer, that hero that's in the back of our minds, the mad scientist who, while he has a job at a university, in his basement he's working on time travel or whatever plot device you might care to insert, simply doesn't exist. Get certain people like Adam Savage who can do incredible things in one day, and they can, build a replica or whatever they feel like. They can build a whole costume. And those people do exist, and they're fantastic, but they're innovators. There's nobody trying to invent the next great big thing. I listen to a lot of strange stuff, and the only people I really hear that do radical stuff are the ones with the least amount of proof of it. That's understandable to a certain extent, because if you were working on something radical and game-changing, you'd want to keep it a secret because, patent thieves are everywhere, just like the Germans proved in World War II. Not saying that the Allies didn't steal a couple things, but the Germans did it better. What this all comes down to is humanity is not inventing. I think part of that comes down to our corporate attitude. Inventing something new is rough. When Steve Jobs put the iPhone together, and he decided that it was not only going to be a phone, It was also going to be a music player. It was also going to be a place that you could order stuff. It was also going to be a place that you could do business. It was going to be one central communication. It was going to be everything all in one. That was still innovation. He took technologies that already existed and mashed them together. It was a game-changing innovation, but it was still only an innovation. The idea that one device could do more. Just like the car. Modern car can do anything from hauling a trailer to, just simply being a pleasure cruiser to go around the block with. No one's really inventing because the corporations want to see a profit on what they have. This is why the defense industry is still inventing to a certain degree. They're definitely innovating because they get paid to invent. Whereas Chrysler doesn't get paid to invent. They're still happy with a four-stroke engine or an electric engine. They're not out there trying to invent a new technology. They're just saying, okay, battery cars, we've had those for 100 years. Oh, internal combustion cars, we've had those for 100 years. So what kind of new layout can we have inside? Should we put the CD player or the iPad player or whatever player that we're going to do? Should we put that in front of the driver? Should we put that in front of the passenger? That is the focus of engineering these days. It's sheer ergonomics. I'm looking at the street right now, and it's all internal combustion engines on the entire street. Why? Because there's no other options. Get onto a bus. Some of them are natural gas powered. That's about it. There's nobody out there who's got, there's a few solar powered cars, but they're rare and expensive. But just looking at cars, nothing has changed in 100 years. Aside from getting a little bit more fuel efficient and being a little nicer to sit in. And the brakes are better. I always complain about the brakes in the old cars. That's the only reason I would never restore an old car is, the safety features are so ridiculously out of date, I would be afraid to take it on the road. But why are inventors gone? First of all, it's very expensive to invent anything. If I've got some really intelligent friends, we could probably sit together and put together a fusion reactor. Give us a year or so, let us play around. We could put together something working in about a year. But where would we get the money for it? Those things are not cheap. Same thing, got smart friends. We could probably put something into orbit in about a year or so. But it's not cheap. So there's a disincentive to invent. Because it costs a lot of money and it doesn't really get you anywhere. Let's just say we accomplish our dreams, we invent the fusion reactor, and we have a rocket that'll take you to the moon in 2 days. Great. Now what do we do with it? We would have to invest in a startup company or assign all of our patents and ideas over to another company that may or may not manufacture it. As a species, we are being disincentivized to invent new products. And that's why we stick with the tried and the true, because there's simply no alternative. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some genius out there in India or China or Russia who's tinkering around in their basement and they have the next ultimate source of power, dark energy or whatever it might be. And if so, hey, I'm telling you, keep it up. But once again, we come back to the problem. People just want to be left alone to live their lives. They'll go to work. Oh yes, there is an incentive to go to work. And anybody who says there isn't, I point to the pandemic and the fact that there's as many people working after the pandemic as there were before. And that was before the benefits even ran out. They wanted to work. They like routine. They could wake up in the morning, have their cup of coffee or tea or whatever, and then drive to their work or take the bus, and then come home, put on the TV, go to bed. That's their lives. Or if they don't watch TV, they have to watch their internet broadcast, whatever the heck that they do to take a load off. And I don't really have a problem with that. But like I said, there's too few people researching and tinkering and doing what's necessary to make the next great invention. I said it before. Tinkering with the car didn't give us the plane. Tinkering with a propeller didn't give us a jet engine. Tinkering with a jet engine did not give us a rocket engine, and none of those gave us the internet. Those were all bold steps forward. We're overdue for a new bold step forward. I'm not talking fusion boiling water. So let's start thinking of ways that we can invent. Maybe it's something ridiculous. Maybe it's something nobody's thought of before. But that would be the interesting part. Nobody has thought of it before. Even if you only write a book and detail your ideas, you're still going to be better off than a person who just sat there and thought, hey, this is a neat idea, and then had another cup of tea and never thought about it again. Anyway, we hope you liked this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And we hope you have a fantastic day.